Please visit nationalparks.org ALHF/ALHF for more information on how you can be involved as well. By highlighting, promoting, and empowering each other to take pride in our participation in the American story, we can ensure that Latinos of all generations will feel more invested and committed to telling, experiencing, and preserving a more complete American history, and become stewards of the land that preserves our precious history. This becomes an instrumental component of reclaiming the national dialogue on Latinos that celebrates our heritage and commands respect for our participation in American history. Because there is a strong case to be made, this too is our land. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitty, and all of us will be sure and tell your boss, Secretary Salazar, that you did a very good job representing the fund today. There are two additional guests that I want to mention. A terrific friend from Los Angeles, a member of the State Assembly there, currently a member of the Los Angeles City Council, and I predict one of the newest members of the United States Congress after the November election, Tony Cardenas. Tony? And also so pleased to be joined by a good friend, the former mayor of Fort Wayne, Indiana, and former president of the United States Conference of Mayors, Paul Helmke. Paul? We'll now take a break so our servers can deliver the main course. Let's give them, our servers, a round of applause for all that they do to help. And we'll resume the program with our keynote introduction after the meals are served. Thank you. Michelle Mingus-Moore recently ended her tenure as our executive director of the Latino Leaders Network due to her relocation to New York City. The board had intended to present her with a special award today to thank her for her outstanding service. However, she was unable to join us, so we will reschedule the presentation for a future event. We are delighted to be joined by Juan Sepulveda, former director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanic Americans, where he served with distinction along with our honoree. Juan is currently the senior advisor for Hispanic Affairs at the Democratic National Committee. He has been a tireless advocate for the Latino community for over 20 years, following his graduation from Harvard and Stanford, and only the third Latino ever awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. This man is a bona fide brainiac. Please welcome Juan Sepulveda to the podium to introduce our keynote speaker.
So anyone who's following March Madness knows that Harvard made it into the tournament. For the big round of applause. Yeah, not too many Harvard basketball fans here. Last time we were in the tournament was in 1946. So people asked, I was very fortunate to be the first one to go to college in my family, and people asked, why Harvard? And I said it was the only place I could play basketball. 5'9" Mexicans at Harvard. So watch the game on Thursday. I wanted to say thanks to Mickey for inviting me. When he asked me to do this, this was an easy one. But before I get started on the introduction of a great friend, what I want to do is to make sure that we give a huge round of applause. Most of you probably know, but if you haven't heard, just recently, the U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute, an organization that we all know very well and love with Dr. Juan Andrade as his head, just awarded Mickey the Medallion for Excellence in Government Relations and just created that award that from this time moving forward will be named in Mickey's honor. So I wanted to give him a huge round of applause. President Obama has talked about a couple things that are really important that I wanted to share as I start our introduction today. The first thing, and you heard earlier in terms of the numbers, we all know the numbers and the growth in the Latino population. So I just wanted to make one little correction from what we heard earlier. The census actually shows not 50.4 million, but 54 million. And as I talk about this, people, because I don't have to explain this to this crowd, but it's 54 million because it's 50.4 million on the mainland, and almost 4 million Puerto Ricans who live on the island of Puerto Rico. And I don't need to let you in on this secret here because this crowd really knows. The Puerto Ricans of the island count. So it's 54 million total. And what the president has said a number of times, which numerically is true, culturally is true, historically is true, when we think about our story is true, and the president has said again and again that the future of the United States is inextricably tied to the future of the Latino community. We also know that the president has challenged us to once again be number one in the world by the year 2020, with having the highest percentage of our population having a piece of paper beyond high school, a community college degree, a four-year degree, graduate work, just anything beyond, knowing that it's going to take that in order for us to out-innovate, to out-build, and to out-educate the rest of the world. And we know with those two things tied together, the importance of education and also the important role that the Latino community is going to be playing moving forward, we also know that the future of the Latino community is linked very, very closely to our Latino leadership. And so one of our most influential leaders, both in terms of education and also as a national labor leader, is our honoree today, and my good friend, Lily Eskelsen, the Vice President of the NEA. A lot of you know Lily in terms of her work, and what I love about her work is, in a place like DC, we know how hard it is to do the politics here, to do the policy here. And what I love about the way Lily goes about her work is the way I think we all need to think about it in terms of standing up for our community and standing up for the country. We have to be critical friends. We need to know whose side we're on and what we stand for and what's really important for us as a community and a country. But at the same time, we can't just go along. We have to push our friends along. And from the beginning, what I've always loved about Lily, she didn't always agree with us. But it was great to have a friend take you inside and said, you're wrong, and here's why. And here's my experience, and here's what I can bring to the table from my time on the ground with all our teachers across the country. It's that kind of a role of getting in there, getting your hands dirty, being able to be honest and true to your passion and what your own experience is, not falling for the other pieces of coming onto commissions and boards and saying, at the same time, the best thing I can do for our community is to be honest about what I'm seeing and what I'm learning, and the way I can help you best, President Obama, is to share that with you day in and day out. But when it's time, as it is now, to talk about a very critical election and to talk about what's coming up, it's also important for our friends who are pushing us to also talk about that big picture and to be able to share with everyone where we're going and what really needs to happen. That, to me, is kind of the essence of what Lily has done in terms of her work, and makes it very important for us to be able to be here today to honor her for the incredible work she's done, both in terms of the Latino community and in terms of education. But the second thing I wanted to mention is the reason President Obama selected Lily to serve on our Presidential Advisory Commission was not about that piece. It was about something else. When we started to look at different people and different names, both for within the initiative, working with the White House, Lily's name was one of the first ones that showed up on everyone's list. And it's not only about the great work she's done, but it's really about her story. And one thing I love about Lily, and she's going to do this now, I haven't even seen her speech, but I know it's going to happen in a second, she just tells great stories. And when the president thinks about the vision for the country, as he said most recently in the State of the Union, that America prospers when everyone from Main Street to Wall Street does their fair share, plays by the same rules, when we're all in it together, and when hard work pays off and responsibility is rewarded. Lily's story is the American dream. There are so many of us who feel fortunate to have been the first to go to college, or the first to do this, the first to do that. But when you think about Lily, born in Fort Hood, Texas, with her dad in the Army, an Army brat, and her mom as a Panamanian, that's the key piece. Remember that, the mom is a Panamanian mom. And moving around, starting in the cafeteria as a lunch worker, moving out as a kindergarten aide, being encouraged to go to college, getting it done, as so many of us had to go through, working at the same time we were there. We have to see if we'll get her to sing today as a starving folk artist as part of that to kind of pay for her college education. But when you think about all those kinds of things that she had to go through to then get to college, to become a teacher, after teaching for just 9 years to be named the Utah Teacher of the Year, you can see the kind of star we're talking about. I was very fortunate in college to take this incredible course with the great Mexican writer Carlos Fuentes. And he used to tell us all these great stories, and then he would say, try to guess who wrote those stories. And we would guess, was it you? Was it Isabel Allende? And was it Garcia Marquez? And he would say, he would always kind of get us, and he would say, no, those stories were true. Those stories were a part of who we are as Latinos in the world. And when I think about Lily and what we've all gone through in terms of the good times and in terms of the tough times, it's those stories of who we are and what we bring to the table and what she has brought to the table for us and for the president, and is why it was easy for us to put her onto the commission, because we knew she would continue to bring that leadership to the commission, and more importantly, to bring her life experiences, to bring those stories, to bring those touches with our community, to make sure that those voices are heard. So I am very proud today to be able to introduce to you all our latest honoree, Lily Eskelsen, the Vice President of the NEA, and my good friend.
I am so impressed with myself. Wow. Really? All of that? And Nikki told me, Nikki said, I don't want you to talk about the NEA and House Bill this or Senate Bill that. He said, I want you to tell your story. Nikki, that's like Christmas. Oh my gosh. I mean, because I just talk. I just like to talk. But to talk about myself, oh, Santa Claus, yes. And I can't tell my story without singing a song. Because this is how I met my husband. This is how I got sixth graders to know their states and capitals. This is how I got the governor of Utah to listen to teachers. And there's always a story that goes with the song. This is a song that was written in Mexico in 1883. But there's not a country, Spanish-speaking country anywhere in the world that you couldn't start this song and they wouldn't just join right in. And that means that it's more than just a sweet little love song. Mothers sing it to their babies. Drunks sing it in bars. And because of that, it's a cultural icon. De la Sierra Morena, cielito lindo, viene bajando un par de ojitos negros, cielito lindo de contrabando. De la Sierra Morena, cielito lindo viene bajando.
gracias, gracias. Thank you so much for this. I'm so nervous and I never get nervous. Okay, so my story. It's an incredible story. My grandfather was born in Nicaragua. He never spoke a word of English. My mother was raised in Colón, Panama. She met my father when he was a soldier on the Canal Zone. And they raised 6 noisy kids and moved every 2 or 3 years, the way military families will do. I was born in Fort Hood, Texas, lived in El Paso, Warner Robins, Georgia, Fort Wainwright, Alaska, Seattle. And then my parents decided when they retired to take their little Catholic family and move, of course, to Brigham City, Utah, where diversity means you found a Presbyterian. And I was 17 years old and in high school when my husband asked me to marry him. He was much, much older. He was 18. And we got married a week after I graduated from high school. Of course, I had to work. And so all I knew is I wanted to work around children. And so I applied for a